Hello, welcome to another episode of Calm in the Chaos. It is March 2026. I'm Michele, Badie, Program Manager and Mental Health Advocate.
And I'm Valerie Carmel, licensed therapist and co-host for Calm in the Chaos. Welcome back, everyone.
Yes. So this month's theme is execution mode is not a personality. This is a continued narrative of our focus for this year, which is the art of done. Val, do you want to tell everyone about the art of done?
Absolutely. So, the art of done is our framework in terms of really encouraging program and project managers to really own their sign off. The ability to not just close the laptop and end the day, but to really focus on how they are ending and stopping work from a physiological standpoint. So, the challenges of even though you're done with work, but you're still kind of in work mode is really where the art of done has come. It really comes into play in terms of creating a ritual or routine that really allows you to end the day and really transition from work into your personal life.
For sure. And so last month, and please catch the episode, it was on invisible impact. And that was centered around project and program managers being shock absorbers. And what does that look like? So this month, we want to continue that narrative around execution mode is not a personality. And that is really considered around how do we build a healthier cadence between execution and recovery. And that's high performance does not require constant pressure. So, Val, from what you've done in working with different program and project managers, where does that start? What is the baseline for that?
So, when we're looking at the shifting away from execution mode into recovery, we're really trying to create the overall environment and create an overall internal sense of relaxation, rest, and recovery.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, we are so busy with kind of working on tasks, meeting our deadlines, talking to stakeholders. There's a lot of, oftentimes a lot of intensity around working on projects. And so when that kind of goes on consistently unchecked, then your body really struggles from shifting from that work mode into an execution mode into recovery mode. And so my role oftentimes as a therapist is really helping people to recognize one, the benefit and the importance of going into recovery, but two, how to effectively create a ritual or an overall cadence or whatever that looks like for them in terms of creating that very clear transition that they can really consistently stick to.
Thank you. And a pattern, let's identify what a pattern looks like when we talk about the cadence and how to recognize the pattern of execution mode showing up and demonstrating as a personality. That could be from different project realities of managing deadlines, managing dependencies, what does visibility look like? And one thing as project and program managers, we are always making sure, I always say we have the flashlight and we're shining things in dark places and things that need recognition, things that need recognition in a good way, recognition in an awareness way, which brings us to visibility, risk, shifting priorities. And we can always be on, and there's an expectation to stay ahead of what can go wrong. And that can come off as our personalities. But one thing I've observed not only in myself, but in my peers and others that I work with in the community and other organizations, corporations, is people do mistake sometimes execution to be our personality, not realizing that a lot of project and program managers are introverts. They're
Totally get
introverts.
that. Totally get that.
We're introverts. And so we head down, get our work done. So coming up, and then when people sometimes you can be met with aggression because you can always be coming for someone for just sake of conversation. They're like, this person's always coming for me. This project manager is always coming for me. This program manager is basically, they're upset or agitated or not handling being held accountable well. And so that's the task, that's the job, that's the role. And it is what many program and project managers do well, but it doesn't mean that's who they are. So if a softer side
Mm-hmm.
reveals themselves, sometimes people can be surprised or taken back, or if they see a more let their hair down, nonchalant side of a program or project
Mm-hmm.
manager, they're sometimes in shock. And it's like, we're doing our job. It's not who we are. There's a difference. There's a difference in
Love that.
execution. And I think that sometimes we, as program and project management professionals, we don't allow ourselves to let that be our reality because we have game face on. We
Mm-hmm.
have get it done face on. I don't want to say game face. I'm like, get it done. We're going to get it done. We're going to make sure, because it's the mental health piece too. We're balancing EQ. We're balancing the tasks. We're balancing the timeline. We're having sometimes the uncomfortable conversations. All that is a part of execution because our goal is to get to the end of the project, accomplishing definition of done,
Mm-hmm.
accomplishing what has been listed on the charter, and just making sure that those that we work with feel heard, feel seen. And so, what does that look like?
Mm. And and I love the way that you kind of really articulated that, because I think the consistency behind the tasks and the responsibilities that project and program managers often take on is the reason why that execution mode can start to feel like that's just your normal mode, right? And I think being able to differentiate between the task and the responsibility from that individual person's personality is super important, because that's where it creates a lot of, from like a neuroscience standpoint, our brain is constantly creating associations between things. And so you, over time, if you consistently show up in a particular task or particular behavior, or with a, I would say, maybe particular energy, right? How you're showing up, that can become associated with the person altogether. And I think it's important to be able to separate the person from the task and role that they're, effectively in. So I love the way that you really kind of articulated that, because I think that's really the overall challenge between people struggling between the execution mode and that particular project and program manager's personality and behavior. So I love that.
And I want to also share, and one, thank you. And I also want to share that sometimes our project teams do not realize, those of us that are leading projects, we have our own idiosyncrasies we're
Mm.
navigating. We have our own past wounds and scars that have keloid over and probably could make a beautiful tattoo or brand, right? Because just, it's a repeat offender, which
Mm-hmm.
when I say repeat offender, it could be an experience that shows up in different ways in different times, but not the same way each time. And one
Time.
thing I've noticed
Mm-hmm.
about a logic project managers, we identify themes. And so if we're experiencing a theme repeatedly, some of us become tenacious about making sure we don't experience anymore. So what is the lessons learned? What do we need to do? What
Mm-hmm.
are we, what, how, why is this keep coming up in a different way? And that's a part of execution mode as well that can be mistaken as who we are,
Mm-hmm.
not what
Mm-hmm.
we're developing through.
Yeah. So in moments like that, in terms of that kind of like tenacity from like a mental health side of things, it ultimately is part of our kind of the way that our brains are effectively set up, right? When our brain identifies something as a stressor slash potential threat, and that threat could be, threat to your peace from the day, threat to your workflow for the day, those kind of things. We tend to become a little bit over time more vigilant in monitoring those things. And so when any cues or behaviors or conversations start to kind of look like it's going down that path, then sometimes it results in a lot of activation, like a quick response to try to get ahead of it. And sometimes that response can become the expectation or become associated with that person's personality, rather than recognizing, no, they're just responding to something that looks like it's going to be a problem. And if I know anything about program and project managers, they are problem solvers. So oftentimes that natural ability to jump in and anticipate a problem and then quickly, or at least attempt to quickly resolve it, can sometimes be perceived as part of their personality rather than, again, their actual role.
We speak in solutions.
Facts. Facts. Sometimes not everybody on, especially because of the role that you guys are in, because you're in kind of interacting and connecting with a lot of other people who aren't technically program and project managers. They have different roles. That kind of leads to this different perspective and different ways that everybody is kind of showing up to the table. And that also kind of impacts the perception of others to how you guys are showing up and how that communication is really ultimately coming across. So I totally.
Sure. Now, one question that we have talked about each episode since we've launched the Art of Done is internally, when someone steps away from work, but their system has not caught up, can we noodle that a bit more when it comes to navigating execution as a personality? Can you describe what that does to our nervous system from your lens?
Sure. So when our bodies don't necessarily, our bodies are not like a light switch. They don't go from off and on in the middle of a flicker. We actually have to support our bodies to go from one state to the other. And one of the best ways that I can articulate that is normally when we're talking about, if you've ever been around a baby, right? If you're holding a baby and trying to put a baby to sleep, most people don't typically just pick them up, put them in the crib, peace out, and then that's it, right? Most people understand that in order to help transition that baby from a state of active playtime to sleep time is to go through a series of steps or rituals that they do in order to get them there. That could be whether you rock them or sing to them, or maybe, you take them a bath or a bottle. Those are things that most people have seen either in their own direct lives or in the lives of their, friends and family members, or even on TV, right? And so that seems very familiar to us, from a social standpoint, but oftentimes we don't realize that the reason why that actually works is because it's the same nervous system that works for the baby. It also works for us as adults. And so when we are going from very hectic days with, pings and emails and team, retros and meetings and all these things, our nervous system is very activated and prepped in terms of being able to respond to these potential stressors. And that can oftentimes lead us to be in a state of kind of to upregulate our emotions. So whether that is a little bit of anxiety, whether that is a little bit of hypervigilance, it really kind of turns on your heightened sense of alertness in order to be able to respond to those stressors. And so that works really, really well when you're in a stressful environment. But when you are coming out of that stressful environment, you need to support your nervous system to transition from this very heightened state into a state where it understands that, hey, we're safe. All of that additional stress or anticipation of the problems and fires that we're expected to, to attend to are done for the day. And we need that same kind of transitionary process to be able to get the body and effectively the nervous system to understand that it doesn't have to be at such a state of alert and transition into a state of recovery where you can effectively relax and get your body ready for sleep later on in the evening. And that is effectively the way to move from execution mode to recovery mode.
For sure. And so I just want to add, like, for clarity, what does that look like? So that could
Mm-hmm.
be revisiting conversations where we're not sure if our messaging landed, or
Mm-hmm.
the response that we received was off putting, or we did not feel that everyone was heard, or the perspective was clear, or the intention was clear. And so
Mm-hmm.
we noodle that. That's something
Mm-hmm.
that we take on.
Play it
We
over and over.
assess. Yes, because we're also assessing communication styles, right? Each project is different stakeholders. Each project has its own personality, right? It has its own personality. Not everyone's cookie cutter. Yes, you have your process that you follow. Yes, you have your templates and your protocols, all the things. At the same time, you have different stakeholders often. You might have some repeats, but usually there's someone new that's joined the party. And so you're navigating that. Like, some want full engagement, some want partial
Mm-hmm.
engagement to the process. That's still an adjustment. Some don't want any emails. Some want only the chat. Some want just, they don't want the full meeting. They're like, can you give us a synopsis? And some want everything, so it's just like, it's a constant on of anticipating stakeholder reactions. And one thing that we may do, I know I've done it sometimes, and I know it's a conversation that I have with fellow high achieving PMs in my life, is mentally holding unfinished loops after hours. Like, you think about it. I know, because sometimes we'll call each other and hypothetically, air quote, talk about a situation without the details, like, hey, if you were in a similar situation like this, how would you handle that? Like, here's a scenario for you, and you are the scenario that's being discussed, even though it's, the players have changed and whatever, because there's different reasons for that. But it goes on, that is those are examples of the continuation that you were just mentioning. It's not always as simple, and we are, at the end of the day, we are humans. We feel.
Absolutely. And I think that mental replay over time is a really common one. I think and that sometimes can just lead to distension in your body as a result of it, right? So tight shoulders, tight neck, tight back. Clenched jaw is probably one that a lot of people don't really notice until I mention it. And then they're like, oh, like, yeah, I do, you
That
know,
is a sticker on my computer. Unclench your jaw. I kid
unclench
you
your
not.
jaw.
It is a
It's such a
sticker.
it's such a common one that people, it's really easy to kind of overlook. Um, Irritability is another one that you can kind of just feel a little bit snappy, because again, your brain is somewhat preoccupied with previous things of the day, which then makes it very challenging in order for you to just be in the moment and focused on what's in front of you. So those are some ways that you can really kind of feel that internal carryover from earlier that day into the rest of your evening.
I
So
love it.
yeah, man. I mean, do you, from your standpoint and your experience, like, have you noticed the difference between, people who, when you're like, when you can see somebody who's just really committed to their work rather versus somebody who's, just always just being hyper vigilant, right? So there's this element of they are synonymous with each other, and they are not. So can have you noticed, or are you able to kind of tell the difference, whether that's in yourself or in others, when we're just moving from this person being committed to this becoming kind of like a constant or a near constant state of just readiness?
Well, those behavioral signs are definitely evident. I can say that I've seen them in me, and I've seen them in others. And from my observation and experience, to identify that, you have to be self-aware.
Mhm.
Self-awareness is key. Being honest with yourself is essential, and being accountable to yourself is required. Like,
Mm.
that's a non-negotiable when you come to understanding committed versus near constant state of
Mhm.
readiness. And commitment is commitment. You're committed to your role, you're committed to following the expectation, the standards, all of that. When it comes to near constant state of readiness, what's triggering that? Are there a lot of layoffs happening? Are you not getting along with someone? Are you looking to be focused on another project? Is personal impacting personal endeavors, be it caregiving, be it, you know, your kids, be it just life, be it, there's so many different things, just fill in the blank, whatever applies to you, right? And so is that making sure there's a balance, making sure that you are presenting, showing up, and you're in tune to what you're doing? Is that near constant state of readiness because you're balancing a little more than expected certain things, or you're navigating certain things, and so you feel like you have to show up any way other than committed? So you're adding
Mhm.
stress, right? That
Mm.
you're increasing your nerves, your stress level is heightening beyond commitment if you're functioning from near constant state of readiness. You're
Mm.
already at you're already, most PMs and project managers and program managers I interact with, all of them are top tier. And I'm not just saying that. They're top tier in their knowledge. They're top tier in understanding how to handle the team. There's top tier in knowing how to be innovative. Like,
Mhm.
I'm always inspired by my colleagues and my peers. And there's a saying, put yourself around smart people. And can you handle being in a room of intelligent people? Well, I say if you ever want to challenge that theory, philosophy, belief, put yourself in the room with some project and program managers.
Man,
Put
those
yourself in the room with project and
that's
program
right.
managers, because they're sharp. They're
Yeah,
sharp.
that's
They're on
legit.
it. They're informed. They're knowledgeable. They know what's happening. They understand the trends. They know how to assess. They know how to break something down. Like, we take things from ideation to reality. Being
Man,
around that kind of mindset on a regular basis is nothing but inspiring. And
I
if you
totally
can't
agree.
stand tall in a room like that and hold your own, that's on you.
That is so true. Like some of the, I mean, honestly, I'm always so in awe of of professionals who are in this industry because I'm always like, wow, like how did you get there? Like that's pretty dope. So I definitely agree with you there. I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of it sounds like there's a lot of, I guess, some level of reinforcement that sounds like it's really coming from the environment that you're in as well, right? So it does sound like there are some ways that the project environments are kind of rewarding that level of readiness. Does it are there any other ways that that can really kind of show up when when you're working with the team and really trying to push towards this deliverable or whatever the definition of done is for for the project?
Well, two things come to mind. If you're not looking at your peers as collaborators and you're looking at them as competitors,
Mm,
this
that's
is
right.
a collaboration role. You cannot look at your peers as your project team as your competitors. You have to be okay with someone else shining sometimes. You have to be receptive to feedback. You have to be open to changing and pivoting. Agile, all of those
Hmm.
words, those are not just words, those are best practice. Those are things that we do. You have to be agile. You have to be open to feedback. You have to be receptive to feedback. You have to be an active listener. These are all things that line up with committed.
Hmm.
Those are minimum requirements for demonstrating commitment.
Yeah.
So when it comes to like near constant state of readiness, are you over monitoring? Do you have trouble trusting? You know, you have
Mm,
to, I think one thing that comes up too when it says like, when people sometimes wonder, well, this can be done tomorrow. And my thing is, are you prepared for tomorrow?
mm,
Sometimes,
yeah.
are you okay with something pausing and seeing how it settles out? Because tomorrow you can get the response that you need. I know one book that I really leaned into this year. Well, actually, I was introduced a year, like it came out in early 2025, but I didn't find my way to it till during the holidays. And it was very timely for me. And it's by Mel Robbins, The Let Them Theory.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean,
Let them.
let them. it's it's essentially allowing, these kind of like natural consequences to kind of just play themselves out, so that you're able to effectively not feel
It's
like you have to solve all the potential fires ahead of or
be-
the what's the word I'm looking for, um anticipated or mentally created fires that don't actually need to be put out, but your body's ready as if it was. So that's what.
yes. And since discovering that book, I've had several people in leadership, mentors, friends, and peers. It's it's in their narrative, right? Because
Mhm.
the committed piece is intense, but it can also, there's that fine line that we were mentioning earlier from that near constant state of readiness. How do you navigate that? Because it can send you like into a nervous state all the time. Like, what is this about? Why are they responding like this? Okay, let's breathe. Let's
Yeah.
let this air itself out a little bit.
There's a line there, right? One of the things I say oftentimes in therapy is that even too much of a good thing is usually not a good thing. So, right? So if we are there has to be a cadence and a little, and I don't want to say a balance, because sometimes that balance can fluctuate over time, but there does need to be a more intentional way to approach things so that you're not always in a state of like laissez-faire kind of lackadaisicalness, but you also don't want to be frequently on the opposite end of the spectrum, in which you are in a state of constant, hypervigilance and and anticipating a problem about to happen either, right? That sometimes
Mhm.
that pendulum can kind of swing too far and a little bit too wide, when in reality we're looking, what the body actually needs is to be somewhere in the middle, that state of like homeostasis, when we're like, we're good. That's the mode that you want to kind of be in as much as possible, so that your body isn't necessarily unintentionally burning additional energy and fuel trying to prepare itself for doomsday, when things are pretty chill right now. Let's enjoy that chill, but also not to the point where you are totally being completely oblivious to what's going on around you, and like, okay, well, unless it's on fire, then I'm not going to worry about it, right? So I think there's a there's a happy medium is where we're trying to get to. Like, and you want to be intentional about what that looks like for you, whether that's, in this season of your life. It may change in a different season, but it's really important to identify what that really looks like for you.
So, though, are those factors of like what you would define as a reinforcement loop to help disengage to be able to rest?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we're looking at what those particular factors look like, I think it really can, we're looking for things that allow you to recognize, one, that you are more than just your role and your position. Like, it's okay to step out of being in that mindset and shift into a different mindset for your personal life. I know sometimes, especially these occupational hazards that kind of show up in our day-to-day life, like there are elements about me being a therapist that is very hard for me to turn off, right? I mean, that's just part of the experience. But I have to frequently remember that while I am a therapist, I am not everybody's therapist. So I don't need to automatically jump into every moment, every situation, every conversation with me providing therapeutic interventions while I'm, a woman in the grocery store line is mentioning, that her head is hurting. Like, I don't need to jump into that. Or if I hear somebody mention, a conflict, that means I need to go down and tell them all of the communication strategies that they can really be going into. Sometimes that's not for me to do. And I think that that is really one of the main factors, is learning how to turn off that particular role and stepping back into who you are as an individual. Um, and while yes, those many of those skills are part of the skills that you utilize for work, right? Problem solving, communication, those things are still there. But it's really important to help to kind of leave work at work so that you can really enjoy the other aspects and other domains of your life without it effectively always being about work, right? The people who are the happiest really have a greater um, flexibility around the different domains of their life, and they're able to experience levels of enjoyment and success in multiple areas. So if we only double down in one domain of our life, then ultimately what we end up leaving ourselves with is allowing every response that we experience very much tied to that domain. So when work is good, that means you're happy and everything is great. But the moment that work becomes stressful, then everything about your personality and every other domain in your life then subsequently suffers, right? So I think being able to really recognize what are the elements for you that you need throughout your day and at the end of your day to really kind of replenish yourself, whether that's from things related to lighting, right? Changing the lighting in the room so that your brain understands, oh, we're shifting from workday to rest time and personal time. One of the things I have in my office is my salt lamp. So when I am, talking to patients, I have my bright lights on, right, to give me lighting. But when I'm done working, that light goes off and my salt lamp goes on. So the room effectively has a different hue and a softer glow to it that really helps my brain understand, okay, we are moving away from the
For
busy bright
sure.
lights to the more calming and subdued elements. And then whatever that looks like in terms of, kind of closing out that loop from earlier that day. So whether that's writing the first things that I need to tackle the following morning down, so that can help a little bit of a brain dump. So you're not just constantly spinning your wheels after work. That can be super helpful to help you know where to start off the following day. So your brain feels like, okay, we know what to do next, and we don't need to keep reminding ourselves or or pinging ourselves internally about this particular task that needs to be completed. It could really be whatever kind of really resonates with you. So it could be, I've told many times about my swing chair. I love that thing. It is the best thing I purchased for myself in 2025. It helps me to like disengage from earlier to that day to the latter part of the day. And I think those are the kind of factors that we really want to consider. How do we really create ways to signal to our brain, either through lighting, either through behaviors, either through movements or cognitive things that allow us to really signal to our bodies, we are done with this part and we are transitioning to this next element or next part of our day.
Those are excellent shares. Thank you, Val. And I just want to add examples of what can lead us to that, or examples of what can help you connect to why that is needed, right? So, the responsiveness for always being praised, right? Always needing to praise your team or recognize an effort. That's constant monitoring, which can go back to what we mentioned to previously, over monitoring a little bit. The need to always stay calm under pressure, being rewarded, always seeing, my goodness, we always talk about the duck
Mhm.
on throughout our different episodes. You look smooth, but your feet are going, and being praised for being the navigator, being the one holding it down, being calm in the midst of chaos,
Yeah,
no pun intended, but
shock absorber, like we talked about
yeah,
last week.
being the shock absorber, all the things. And so, how always being available can become normalizing, but can quietly, to your point, serve to you cracking, right? Like you're managing personalities and other people's needs, and PMs can be empaths, right? And so that can wear on you over time if you don't navigate that for yourself, making sure your cup is full. And Val just gave some excellent examples on what it looks like to fill your cup.
Absolutely. I was speaking with someone the other day who is an engineer, and they were talking about this idea of this demand, the demand to capacity ratio, which I am like, that's beautiful, because what they explained to me is that there's always a capacity times 10%, and then that's the ratio. So you always need an additional 10% capacity in order to respond to the demand. And I feel like one of the things that is really, really challenging for a lot of professionals, but especially program and project managers, is that because the demand is so high and the energy is going so much towards meeting that demand, we forget that we also have to really intentionally pour into and rebuild that capacity. It's like trying to drive cross country on a quarter tank of gas. Like, it's not going to work. So we have to be a lot more intentional about pouring into building more of that capacity so that you have the room and the energy and fuel to be able to respond to the intensity of the demand of your role. So look at that transition into recovery as part of you rebuilding your capacity again, so that you can respond and show up to the demands of the following day. I think that that's something that is super important, which is why we have really kind of created the art of done, because we understand the need for us to really pour back into ourselves so that we can really focus on pouring back into our team, our stakeholders, and essentially into the project.
So, would you define that as the baseline state?
Which one?
What you just shared that
Mhm.
kicked off with the quote from the engineer that you spoke with
Mhm.
that could easily apply to a PM. Would you
Mhm.
consider that the baseline
Yeah,
state of mind?
that it should be. I don't necessarily know if people in general show up that way. I think in a lot of ways, for the reasons that you mentioned, in terms of kind of the reward and praise that that you would often get because of kind of showing up as that shock absorber, constantly showing up as that person who solves the problems and kind of gets things done. Sometimes that positive reinforcement can oftentimes lead us into focusing too much on the demand and not necessarily the side of the capacity. So I think that should be our baseline, to always have extra capacity um, above our demand. But I don't necessarily know if we as professionals or society have really kind of gotten that message to really kind of lead that way and show up that way consistently.
So, one the factors that impact that from a PM perspective is escalation management,
Mm.
managing dependencies, always scanning for a risk. Those are things that add pressure to
Mhm.
our day. And it sometimes, depending upon how you choose to manage, it puts you in a state of always looking for what can go wrong versus what can go right, which can
Mhm.
also impact how you end your day, right? Because by the time you
Absolutely.
end your day, you're just like, oh my goodness, and nothing blew up versus, oh my goodness, we accomplished all this today.
Mindset, definitely, right? Like
Yeah.
that that conceptualization of whether are we looking at it like, half glass, is the glass half empty or is the glass half full kind of aspect,
Yeah.
definitely does really set that tone for the way that you show up in those moments, and also effectively your willingness to be intentional about rebuilding your capacity. when we're talking about these patterns of behavior, right? These patterns of thoughts that kind of just is a the brain is really good at becoming quite predictive. So if it knows that these are the things that we tend to do, right? We are constantly scanning for potential risks. That over time, the more that you do it, the brain effectively learns, oh, this is our normal. This is our baseline. We're going to continue to show up this way. And over time, you kind of get a little bit um, desensitized to how much you're actually doing it. And that becomes in and of itself, which is in and of itself a problem. And I think one of the things you mentioned earlier, which is so important to this, is that self-awareness piece. We are able to really kind of recognize, like I used to kind of think about this maybe 1 or 2 nights a week, and maybe that was how there were 1 or 2 nights a week where this would happen, but now it's happening 3 or 4 times a week. So wait a minute,
Yeah.
that's okay. This is different. Let me take a step back and reassess and see what's kind of going on that's leading me to doing this behavior a little bit more than I used to.
Yeah, I think one thing that's essential from the conversation today, as we talked about execution mode is not a personality, a factor of that is, and connecting it to the art of done, is making sure that we accept there's no perfect, clean stopping point to the work that we do sometimes when it comes to our work day in the midst of navigating and leading a project.
Mm-hmm.
There's no Sometimes it is the comma, it is the pause, and sometimes it's no longer in progress, like it's blocked. And I think sometimes I say that project grief is not addressed enough. It shows up in different ways, not just if a project didn't go, not if you spent all this time, but it can show up in always having presenting unintentionally sometimes, intentionally or unintentionally, depending upon if you're in that committed versus um
Constant readiness
constant
phase.
readiness, right? If you're in that constant, that might be a thing, but I think that it also can impact the perception of being in execution mode, which can really contribute to project grief sometimes because where are you allowed to exhale?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where it's so important if with you are meeting with your peers in your company, community, however you execute and practice being a project or program manager, I think it's very essential if you have peers value, and I'm speaking to the choir because I'm going to assume based off my community of practitioners, it's majority of the time a very safe space to speak freely. And
Mm-hmm.
so to let your hair down, to call a thing, but you also can only dwell in that space for so long, and you need to not let that be the narrative. It's just a vent, a blurb, a boop. Oh, okay, it's out, out. But it doesn't curate the tone of the meeting. It doesn't curate the next steps. Like you got to get it out so you can shift your perspective and get back on track. But I do think there's value in that because if you don't have those moments, sometimes it can be a contributor to project grief.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that point about um, creating that space to kind of, process, reflect, and recover is not just solely for you as the individual. I mean, definitely that's relevant here, but I also think that also extending that also to your teams, right? So where those elements where that, maybe the project got pulled and now everybody's kind of left with a, womp womp kind of feeling, right?
Yeah.
That's an important element to really kind of name and allow people to have that moment to again transition from we're going from execution mode into somewhat of a recovery mode. Yes, we didn't necessarily initiate it, right? That may have come from an external decision, but that's
Right.
still an important element to really help your team as well as yourself to transition from that kind of focus of execution definitely to recovery.
And we can name that misreading composure.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because
That
I
can be
look
read as
calm,
misreading composure.
I may look calm on the outside, but that may not be what's happening on the inside. So that is legit.
Which could eventually cost leadership, creativity, innovation, morale, right? Reducing
Absolutely.
clarity because you've it's been a misread.
Because you think, oh, they're fine with it. Nobody cares about it. Oh, that's not a big deal. And in reality, people are actually just left reeling and kind of trying to make sense of this experience all on their own. So that is a very, very good point. Love the project grief element added to that, because that definitely is going to really impact, really be a potential outcome to not being able to really kind of transition a team as well from that execution to recovery. So I mean, is there anything for you over the years that you have found that has worked in terms of helping you to kind of shift from execution mode into more recovery mode over the years?
Therapy.
Hmm.
Going to therapy and my experience in therapy and just reflecting on how I navigate my day
Hmm.
and understanding my contribution to that.
Love that.
My
Personal
contribution to
accountability.
that. Listen, I said it earlier.
It's so true though. Like, you got to know,
My
right?
contribution to that. And I was, and just to make it full circle to the work that we're doing. I know that we talked about this in previous episodes, but it's okay to bring it up here too. The work that we've been doing with this initiative that we're championing, it has caused me also to dig deeper into what does that look like. And I see a difference in
Mm,
myself, in my communication, and how I process, mainly how I process and how I communicate. I'm definitely mental health, mental health, mental health. Definitely.
rah, rah, rah. Yes.
Oh, yes. But at the same token, it has really prompted me to lean into kindness culture even more.
Mm.
It's so important to be kind.
Oh, love that.
It's really important to be kind. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes people treat kindness as a casualty in your day. There's
Mm.
nothing wrong with please and thank you.
Facts.
There's nothing wrong with if you don't want to know how someone is doing, if you don't want to say how are you because you don't really want to hear what they have to say back, because sometimes, I know, and this is one thing I have noticed a lot with people just in general. People are really, when they ask you how are you doing, they really do want to know.
Mm.
They do, and I don't know if that's because of what the world has been through post COVID. Like, how are you doing? I haven't seen you because hybrid culture is real. Some are
Mhm.
back in office, some are, remote. Just how our way we work has pivoted. And so when
Mhm.
people are asking how are you doing, most of the time people really do want to know. But you can also just say, hey, I hope today's a good day for you.
That's it. Yeah. And I love the mention of kind of kindness, but I also think it's really important for that kindness to also be centered back towards you as well. I think a lot of people find it easier to be kind externally, but when it comes to themselves, it's harder to um extend that grace and have that compassion and have that understanding and kind of recognize, their own cues, like, oh, I'm really tired today. I should probably, but no, I'm going to push through and do all, like, no, it's okay to be kind to yourself.
It
And one
is.
of the things I really encourage people to do is that if you find yourself having a response to something, I always challenge people to consider if this was happening to somebody else that you loved, right? If this was happening to your bestie, if this was happening to your sister or brother, would you respond the way to them the way that you are to yourself? And if the answer is no, then you should definitely think about that, because that's really something to consider in terms of allowing yourself to go from this really hyper, you know, alert state of putting out fires and responding to everybody else, to you creating space for yourself, is a necessary part of recovery. Right? Our nervous systems were not designed to be elevated and on for hours, for weeks, for months at a time. Like, that's not
Yeah.
what our bodies are designed to do. And so consider the art of done as an opportunity for you to be kind to yourself, and engage in at least one thing that you can do for yourself that really supports your transition from execution into recovery. That could be changing the lighting, that could be you just changing your clothes. Like, it doesn't even have to be anything complex, but it just needs to be one thing that signals, I am I'm owning my sign off from the workday, and I am going to transition into my personal life. So I love that.
That's being kind.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Allowing yourself grace. That's one thing I would say I hear a lot of people saying right now, not only to me,
Mhm.
but just in general. Please extend yourself grace.
It's music to a therapist's ears. That's
Do you
how
have
we
any
should really
final thoughts?
gently show up. I think I just really encourage everybody to really to really be kind to themselves and recognize that you deserve rest and recovery in response to your existence on this planet. Like, whether we are working or not, life is stressful. Being a human is stressful. So extend
Hmm.
yourself some grace and really allow yourself moments to recover. It isn't something that you have to, intentionally earn. It's something that you just deserve because you're human and your body needs it. So that definitely would be my last point. How about you?
Be intentional about assessing your day, because the art of done, what we are championing, we launched at the beginning of this year. We're still in the first quarter. So I would it's an assumptive statement. We're all still, hmm. It's not necessarily something all of it, me included, because this came from something that we saw a need for, and we're testing, we're holding ourselves accountable. I'm holding myself accountable to what we are committed to coming here on and sharing through this platform. And I'm still like, when I end my day, some days I'm like, girl, what are you doing? There's so much going on. Like, there's so many tabs open. Like, what is happening right now? And then other days I'm like, I got the woo-saw down. I got it. I got it. I got it. Right. So I just encourage everyone to join me and just really assessing intentionally, how are we ending our days? Can it be better? Does it need to be time blocked? Can certain things be done on certain days? Are you holding yourself? Are you executing your processes well in order to be able to practice the art of done? Like, are you
Wow.
using your time wisely during your day to be able to sign off and be present in the evening for whatever that is, where you could be positioning yourself to have to work after hours
Mhm.
because we didn't manage our time the best we could. Now maybe you had to do other things and that doesn't apply for that day, but it's just a blanket statement, which
Mhm.
comes down to that accountability piece and self-awareness. It's a hybrid, right? Accountability, self-awareness, just being aware of what is going on and how you contribute to that for yourself.
Absolutely. I love that. That's a great point.
Yeah. So there we are. Until next month, please take care of yourself. Please be kind to yourself and drink your water
Absolutely.
for
Absolutely.
sure.
Extend yourself that grace.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. See you next month. And if you have any feedback, please comment. I know that we get DMs as well, sharing feedback if people run into us. Those are like some of my favorite. The pull on the shirt. Can I tell you something? Yes, you can.
Yeah,
Please, I want to hear
absolutely.
it.
Yes.
So we welcome that, the shares, and we wish you nothing but goodness. Thank you for joining us.
Bye.